Welcome, it's Terrilynn, TravelingArtista. Today I'm going to do a little demo on apples to apples. It's just something that we can use to get us warmed up when we're getting ready to do a larger painting. It's amazing, sometimes I totally forget this step. I want to just jump right into the masterpiece, which then of course does not become a masterpiece. A little bit of planning and some warm-ups really help the whole process. Right here I have apples in front of me. They are on the table beside me. I got them at the orchard yesterday. I purchased them with the leaves on them. And my daughter's like, "Why did you get the ones with the leaves?" And I'm like, resources to paint. It's something I can look at and draw from life. I started out with a fat vine charcoal. It's about as fat as my little finger. And I hold it on its side so I get very broad, angular strokes. I start measuring, partially in my head, partially on the paper. I set in the lines to help me define exactly where each object is going to go. For some reason with the apple, I tend to start with the apple itself, but also with the stem area. That seems to be a nice anchoring spot for drawings of an apple. And then moving off from that with a lot of energy and still being tied in are the strokes that lead to the leaves and sometimes the shadows. Now you don't want to outline a shadow, but it's nice to indicate where it's going to be placed. My next step was bringing in some of the undertones. Here that purple is that shaded side of the apple, and that dark russet red, kind of a burnt sienna, is also in there. I lay out some neutral areas of the green for leaves, and then bring in green for apple. Now, anytime you're drawing something that comes from nature, anything that grows, especially fruit and vegetables, it's a good idea to give a little hint of that green state as that fruit or vegetable is maturing. And it ties it back into not being too perfect. That beauty of imperfection that my friend Jen Evenhoose talks about as she paints. If it's too perfect, I mean, seriously, go and take a photograph. This painting expresses your inner spirit, your inner energy, and you want that to shine through. And if a painting is too perfect, it's not going to have that personality in it. Study some of the masters and you can see how their personalities are evident in their paintings in so many different ways. I added in some shadow areas of the reds. I've started pulling in some of those brighter reds, a hint more of that spring green, sap green they'd call it in watercolor. It's interesting how a lot of pastels don't really have specific color names, but that's okay, we can figure them out. I did not really do a color plan for this particular sketch. I just kind of went with the colors instinctively, picking them up. I'm also using the background of that Mi-Tint paper, that Canson Mi-Tint that I had lightly pumiced a while back, so it does have a sanded texture to it. And I'm using that soft purple gray, mauve gray, whatever it is, as part of the painting itself. So allow those colors to shine through when you're using a tinted paper. My little piece of white off to the side gives me a comparison between the black and the white. So my lightest lights, my darkest darks. And this one, I didn't want it overwhelmingly contrasty. So I'm working between those two extremes. Here I'm starting to throw in some of the background. This apple's sitting on a table. It's a light marble table, so it's picking up a lot of light. And I'm working with the negative space here. Sometimes I'm laying the pastel on its side for broad strokes, and then other times I use the tip of it. Notice how I just wiped off the pastel so it has a nice clean surface when I put it on. Pastel tends to pick up color that's already on your painting, and it will carry it along with it on the stick. If you want a clean, bright color, especially those lighter tones, you're going to want to wipe that off with a rag as you go. The times in between here, I'm going back to my palette, my full palette, and deciding on what colors I'm going to pick up next. I'm trying to put down the elements in broad and quick strokes. My instincts are working. Here I just kind of added some random lines to indicate some of the stems, but always it's in a thought process of the design of the overall painting. If it's a stem, make it go in the direction of the stem. Generally, again, doesn't have to be perfect. Now again, I am working with that negative space, trying to add interesting elements to the painting. And here are just some highlights. Make that apple a little bit shiny. Stepping back. If you notice, I'm gone quite often. Besides picking out colors, I am also stepping back about 8 to 10 feet from the painting so I can get a good objective view of it. Another trick you can do is actually take a photograph with your phone and look at it that way. Turn it upside down, reverse it, see if the composition is working. So many tools that we can use. On your phone also, most of the new smartphones have photo apps that you can turn into black and white, so you can check to see if your tones are working on the painting. Stepped back, a couple more touches, things I wanted to possibly bring out. Just a simple sketch, but still enjoy doing every single painting that you do. This is for your enjoyment, for your love of art, for your self-expression. Now I'm getting back to the apple again. The light has changed, and I am making a second sketch. I did not do any planning for the color groups or a color scheme on these. I was just going instinctively with what was in front of me. Using those apples sitting on that table, and man, the light was changing quickly. So this initial underlying sketch helps me measure and place some of the objects as I'm thinking. Initially, you might want to do very detailed sketches, but you don't have to. You're going to cover this over with paint. What you're looking for is placement and measurement and indication of where you will be going in the future with detail. I did try picking up some different colors just to begin with. Remember the last time it was kind of that purple, and now I'm starting with this medium ultramarine blue. Laying in some color. Doesn't matter really if it's on the apple, the leaves, or the table. Shadow areas are going to have some of that ultramarine blue in it. For this painting anyway. When you're doing little sketches, it doesn't necessarily have to lead to a larger painting. I was working on a big painting right before this, and I had gotten it to a point where I felt a little bit stuck. The painting was getting a little stilted. I needed to take a break from it. So this is like going outside for a walk, but for your brain and your creativity. It's like, yep, I'm just going to play around with something that I don't have to worry about, and that will relax me. And then when I go back to that larger painting, I should be able to see it with a fresh eye, and easily those problem areas will jump out at me and I can fix them without a lot of fussing. Nothing like fussing with a painting to deaden it. You want to keep these strokes fresh and exciting as much as you can. Here I again am overlaying some colors over each other. That will gray it down. Remember, when you're using complementary colors, colors opposite each other on the color wheel, or split complements, those are the ones that are near the complement, it's going to do two things. If you layer them and blend them, you will neutralize that original color you had put down. It will soften it. It will bring it away from that brilliant chroma, that bright color, and make it more slightly grayed. I don't want to say grayed really, because it's not gray. Gray is just black and white. This is neutralized with color. The other thing that complementary colors can do is intensify each other. By putting them in juxtaposition, it makes the color seem brighter. If you look here, that ultramarine blue near the top of the apple, right beside that light warm red, which is almost an orange, both of those colors seem brighter than they do other areas on the painting. It's like adding spice to the color. So that's a good tool to use for complementary colors, either to neutralize or to intensify, depending on how your strokes and your marks go onto the paper. Here I'm just playing around. I like that purple. That's kind of a secondary complement from that green. The green is rather grayed and the purple is more intense. Plus also, you have something like a red apple. There's not actually that much red on it. Our brains want to make it so red that it doesn't look quite real. You have those layers, that initial green layer that is under from where it grew through in its whole becoming process. Remember, it starts out as a green apple and then it ripens. And the blue of the shadows that turns a red into purple. And it just makes it more interesting. It's fun. Here again, I am laying in the negative background. I'm using a lighter blue this time. I didn't want it too intense at the beginning. A nice soft blue again. Even though it's a different shade or tint, it's still in that complement of that red apple. Now I bring it up even lighter, those highlights behind, and that negative space around the apple helps to intensify the apple and the leaves. Each stroke, you want each stroke to be interesting in itself and then to work together as the whole for the whole painting. See, that one was a little bit more line. Lay it on its side, it's a little more flat area. This is why pastel is painting. It covers area of the surface. I love it because you can kind of paint with it, you can kind of draw with it, you can go back and forth. It's a great variety, a great versatility in this particular medium. Adding in some interesting strokes and marks. I don't know, it's just fun. And it does add interest. Here's a soft little highlight. I'm using a light pink on that apple. Doesn't have to be brilliant white. Color is more interesting than just black and white. Here are the two sketches side by side. Just kind of fun. A little bit different, but it was a nice exercise for me. I enjoyed it. Didn't take myself seriously, didn't take the painting seriously. So, go ahead and do some sketches. Loosen up, enjoy and just experiment and have a good time. Then you could get back to that serious painting later. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and then get to painting for yourself. Enjoy!